I agree, and I think you were making the point earlier on in terms of rather than trying to do everything at once, it's like pick a service area, a domain, and figure out how to do that and have some wins in an area and demonstrate the potential to then grow it, as opposed to trying to do too much at once and then frustrating everybody by not making the progress that you want to make and not seeing the value and then stopping the program because you think that it's not working for you. So.
Yeah, the other side of it with services procurement is people just not getting started because the problem's too big. If they,
So that's where you want to take in bite sizes
you're
rather than,
taking exactly, and so the reason you've just mentioned absolutely is a critical reason for that, and it ties into what you've said to me before about the change management issues. Um, so in fact, do you want to just cover that in a little bit more detail in terms of if you think about this going into an organization, trying to put a really good program and management around the procurement of services across different categories, that change management approach, you've said to me before, it needs to have some specific considerations depending on what you're dealing with.
yeah, I think what we're trying to do, excuse me, is we're trying to change the way that people go about doing their work. And so we do need a structured approach to change management in order to be able to actually make it stick. And the change management's got to be probably more on the internal customer side than it does on the procurement side. I think procurement is going to understand this is good, is going to enable them to do their job more effectively. There's value there for them. They're going to be on board, I think, more quickly. I think the internal customer though has a way of doing things. Procurement is not what they get up and worry about on Monday morning. They've got another job to do, and this is just a means to an end. And so having them understand the process, understand the potential value, understand how they need to work differently in order to have this tool give them the benefits that are potentially there, right? I think it requires some, specific communication, specific training, specific rollout, specific reporting, clear governance, so that we can have a successful program that's then viewed as successful and fundamentally changes the way that people do their job. Um, and we avoid the going rogue approach because they don't think the process is supporting what their needs are. But I think I say, it needs those kind of fundamental tenets, and it needs the right level of sponsorship too. So, if we're going to work with marketing, that the chief marketing officer says, I'm on board, we're going to make this work, we're going to give it whatever, 6 months, 9 months, a year. We're going to commit to it. We're going to see the value, and we'll tweak it as we go. But I don't want to hear people say it's not working. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, these are really, really good points. So earlier on in the conversation, we were talking about the approach of procurement trying to be more strategic, and therefore, if where they're open to that, they need to get the data, they need to capture things effectively in systems and platforms and processes. Um, the other side of that is where there's this kind of protectionist approach where procurement say, I don't want to bring in technology or get more visibility on what I'm doing because I'm quite happy doing my transactional thing and I don't want that to change. That you get those kind of two different approaches where one of them is very forward looking and the other one is kind of a bit isolationist or it's protective. It's not effective in moving forward. And I think what you're talking about, that's change management as well, ultimately.
I would agree. Yeah.
And when you're talking about it going into the business, you've got that the procurement or the business stakeholders that are trying to make this happen have got that job to convince people. And I think the idea of being able to do things bit by bit and the ability to have flexibility in how you do it is absolutely crucial because by doing it bit by bit, you're getting away from this issue that has basically hampered organizations, stopped them from addressing services procurement, which is if I do it, it has to be everything. It has to be the whole elephant that I'm eating at once. And
Mm.
it's massive and it's loads of spend, could be many billions of spend in a large organization annually. And it's critical and every stakeholder's got to be involved and it's really complicated. And it just doesn't happen. And
Right.
that's an issue. That's why to a large extent it's been hampered in the previous years. In my experience, you have to be able to break that down. not just to make it something that an organization can actually make a start on, but also so that it can then be expanded out across different areas. Because as you say, if you're trying to convince multiple different departments and multiple different areas, they're going to have different requirements. And we've seen it from our customers where something that's been really favorable is the ability for tech to be flexible, depending on what type of buying area you're dealing with. If you're dealing with, you know, ongoing maintenance services in an engineering or, kind of infrastructure type organization, that might be very difficult in terms of the stakeholders involved in the process, the actual process itself, how requirements need to be written, how sign-offs need to happen, governance, things like that, versus safety critical work, for example. Um,
Yeah,
but that's something where the underlying architecture of the procurement of that service, i.e., the kind of statement of work journey, the basics of that are the same, and that kind of that process still operates in the same way fundamentally. So if that's captured digitally, you're already off to a good start. But then to make that change management effective, taking into consideration the specifics of that particular department within that specific particular organization, I think are absolutely critical. And also by doing it bit by bit, you've got the proof point to bring with you rather than
right.
trying to create a giant business case from day one, which, especially when it's something new, can be pretty challenging.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with everything you said, and I think that in selecting that starting point, the business partner that you want to work with to kind of get going, having the right level of sponsorship. So I think it's the C-suite, chief marketing officer, chief financial officer, chief engineering officer, whatever the role might be, uh, is a keen participant.